Hello, everyone. Welcome to Untold History, where we explore history's most important and often forgotten events. Today we head to what is now California to learn about the Kumeyaay Rebellion, an indigenous uprising against Spanish colonization in the region. This uprising was a direct response to the growing colonial pressure that sought to change not only the territory of this people, but also their beliefs, their ways of life, and their own social and spiritual structures. The Kumeyaay Rebellion allows us to glimpse the life and resistance of indigenous communities in the face of the complex systems of colonization that the European powers imposed on the Americas. This event was not an isolated act of resistance. It represented a profound and structured response against a colonial system that threatened to change their world forever. For the Kumeyaay, the Spanish invasion and the establishment of missions not only meant a territorial loss, but also a transformation in their beliefs and values, since religion, spiritual practices, and the relationship with nature occupied a fundamental place in their daily lives. The Spanish missions required the indigenous people to abandon their traditional religious practices, as well as their structures of social organization, in order to adapt to an alien way of life that subjected them to a new spiritual and political authority. The imposition of Christianity and the mission system also represented a loss of autonomy for the Kumeyaay, as they had to accept the leadership of the missionaries and live under a rigid system of rules that was completely foreign and in many cases oppressive to them. In addition to cultural loss, the arrival of the colonizers also brought with it diseases unknown to the Kumeyaay, which began to decimate the indigenous population. The lack of immunity to diseases brought by Europeans, such as smallpox and measles, had devastating effects. Not only did this weaken the community physically and emotionally, but it was also seen by the Kumeyaay as a manifestation of the dangers associated with the foreign presence. The introduction of these diseases, coupled with the restrictions imposed by the mission system, caused the quality of life and future expectancy to deteriorate rapidly. These living conditions intensified resentment and the desire to preserve the Kumeyaay way of life, and became key factors that led to the uprising. For them, rebellion was a way to resist not only tangible oppression, but also an invisible threat that undermined their existence. The Kumeyaay Rebellion had repercussions that transcended the San Diego region, as it demonstrated to other indigenous groups and the colonial authorities that the native peoples were not willing to accept the Spanish imposition without a fight. Although the uprising was eventually put down, the colonial authorities took steps to reinforce security at the missions, aware that discontent could trigger new revolts. The rebellion also marked a shift in the way the colonizers perceived the Kumeyaay, recognizing them as a community capable of organizing and determined resistance. This historic event not only revealed the capacity for indigenous resistance, but also the limitations and vulnerabilities of the mission system. Over time, the story of this rebellion would become a symbol of struggle and dignity for future generations of Kumeyaay and other indigenous peoples in the region, reminding them of their right to live in freedom and preserve their culture. On November 4, 1775, in response to this cultural and territorial invasion, the Kumeyaay launched a coordinated attack on Mission San Diego de Alcala, the first mission established in the region. The rebellion was carefully planned and precisely executed, evidencing the organization and determination of the Kumeyaay to protect their culture and autonomy. During the attack, the Indians set fire to the mission buildings, destroying much of its facilities and killing missionary Father Luis Jaime. For them, the act of resistance was a clear rejection of Spanish domination and a demonstration that they were not willing to give up their identity without a fight. The violence of this uprising also reflects the deep discomfort of the indigenous community in the face of the abuses and injustices they were suffering. The mission symbolized not only the imposition of a religion alien to their beliefs, but also the loss of their freedom, their autonomy, and their right to live according to their own rules. Through the destruction of the mission and the attack on its representatives, the Kumeyaay sought to reaffirm their right to be respected as an independent culture, free from the impositions and limitations of the colonizers. However, the response of the Spanish authorities was not long in coming. Following the attack, the the colonial government sent reinforcements to quell the rebellion and punish those responsible. The reaction was swift and brutal. Spanish forces persecuted and punished indigenous leaders involved in the uprising, applying violent reprisals against those who had dared to challenge colonial rule. Despite their bravery and determination, the Kumeyaay were outnumbered in strength and resources, and the rebellion was put down. However, their resistance was etched in history as an act of dignity and a testament to their struggle to keep their culture alive. The Kumeyaay Rebellion is remembered today as a courageous attempt to resist colonization and the imposition of a system that threatened to destroy their way of life. Although they failed to defeat the colonial forces, their uprising was a symbol of resistance and a reminder of the difficulties indigenous communities faced as they were forced to adapt to a system that did not respect their worldview. This event underscores not only the bravery of the Kumeyaay, but also the complexity of the relationships between European colonizers and indigenous populations in North America. This rebellion also raises important questions about the nature of resistance and the preservation of identity in the face of oppression. In this context, we can see how indigenous communities fought to preserve their identity and freedom in the face of external threats. The story of the Kumeyaay invites us to reflect on the resilience of indigenous peoples and their ability to resist adversity, defending their values, their traditions, and their right to exist as a culture. Thank you for joining us in this analysis of the Kumeyaay Rebellion, a chapter of history that deserves to be remembered and understood in all its depth. Here in Untold History, we will continue to explore events and characters that, while often forgotten, have left a mark on human history. If you liked this episode, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss our next revealing stories in Untold Story. See you in the next one.